Hello, my name is David DeSantis, and I'm doing this video to explain a little bit about crossing the chasm. When I had talked to my sister last month about the real estate industry and how realtors, in my opinion, that there's a knowledge gap that exists between realtors and the internet, and that realtors, especially when it comes to their online listings, that there is a big gap of people who understand part of it and people who don't understand it. And I explained a little bit about these video tour providers and virtual tour providers, how virtual tour providers have been out there for better of 10 years, and yet you're only looking at a fraction, like less than 4% of real estate listings online right now have some type of enhanced listing, either virtual or video tours. And so very clearly and obviously there is a huge knowledge gap that exists. And she was explaining to me that really what I'm talking about, and really what it's called, is crossing the chasm. And I said, well, what is this crossing the chasm thing about? Now, before everybody says, well, yeah, okay, here we go, here's a load of baloney, let me explain something for people that aren't familiar with crossing the chasm. Back in 1991, Jeffrey Moore wrote a book, Crossing the Chasm. And this book and this whole philosophy has been adopted and is used in educating people who are in particularly MBA programs in the marketing part of the program, and they talk about this in great detail. And venture capitalists, when it comes to looking at investing in a technology company, they refer to this this whole philosophy of crossing the chasm. And basically, in a nutshell, it's when is this technology going to catch on with the mainstream market? Because the mainstream market, that the gap is the chasm is the difference between struggling and startup and making money. And so this is not, absolutely not, quote unquote, Kool-Aid or any made-up thing. This is well accepted, well recognized in the business community as a factual thing that is looked at. And so let me show you. And like I said, we're talking about a technology here, which this does tie in with virtual tours, with video tours, and real estate. Because back in the day, innovators, somebody at some point said, let's do video of real estate. Hey, that sounds like a great idea. Let's try that out. Those were the innovators. Let's try it. And then you look at it and you have some realtors who may have signed on to it and said, hey, you know what, that sounds like a great thing. Those are early adopters. Right now, real estate, when it comes to video tours and even virtual tours, is still in this early adopter stage. And another way of thinking of this also is, an example would be Active Rain. Active Rain has, 170,000 users and so forth. When you think of real estate overall, and there's 1 million realtors in the United States, and you look at the percentage of realtors that are actually on Active Rain, it's a very small percentage. Those people that are on there now, that have been on there for the last year or whatever, it's still in the early adopter stage. Welcome Mat, same thing with Welcome Mat. It's still early adopter stage. It has not reached the early majority in the mainstream market yet. Video and virtual tours are still, even after 10 years of virtual tours, still early adopter stage. And the difference between early adopters and early majority is money. Here you may have, and every market is different. So when people say, yeah, you know what, my business is doing very well, I've been doing it for X amount of years. Well, the reality is you're only doing a fraction of of your market for business. That's all you're doing, because the early majority for video tours has not caught on. So right now you're just scratching the surface. That's all you're doing. And I'm going to show you the chasm. Okay, when we talk about crossing the chasm, it is the difference between early adopters and early majority, and is getting the technology into the early majority, which is part of the mainstream market. Here is the chasm. Okay, if I were to say I'm going to be a virtual tour provider, or I'm going to be a videographer, start doing videos, tours for realtors, and then I'm like, hey, I'm the videographer. I do, I may only get a handful of people to sign on in my market. Why? Because it's still right here, early adopters. And in this example here, they're saying, you're overly concerned about being here. If you're starting up, early majority. Right now, there's only a fraction of people that are doing video tours for real estate. When you think about it, nationwide, there's only a fraction of it. Why? Because it's still in the early adopter stage. Once you bridge the gap, once you cross this chasm and connect the early adopters and get into the early majority, all of a sudden now mainstream is doing it, and business is going to go. And you may be in a market where early adopters, where you say, hey, my business is going great. I've got 20 realtors or 30 realtors that I'm doing tours, video tours for, or I've got 100 realtors that I'm doing video tours for. And you know what? That's great. But guess what? When you're still in this early adopter stage, when you get into this early majority, when video tours gets into that and is more accepted by the mainstream market, which when you look at this here, early adopters, you're only talking 13.5%. Early majority, 34%. So you're looking at 21% more business. If you're doing 100, you could be doing 121. You may actually, depending on your market, this may actually represent, the early majority may actually represent double, triple, quadruple what you're doing now for business. So that's the thing that people need to keep in mind. When you're thinking of people who are, if you're struggling to get it out, to get the word out there, why aren't people getting it? It's not that it's that they're not getting it, it's that they don't understand it. And in order for them to get it, you need to bridge that knowledge gap. And the same thing with Welcome Mat, and the same thing with Active Rain. And when you think of back to Facebook, when Facebook started, you had the innovators, the early adopters, and then it started to hit the early majority, where it started to become mainstream. And now Facebook goes from 5 million users, 15 million users, 20 million users, boom, 100 million users, 150, 175, 200. Now we're up to 300, 350. You're going up and up and up. Okay, that is at one point Facebook crossed the chasm, and when they did, their users went through the roof, and it's still going up. Okay, and so that is what the biggest problem is with videography and with real estate. It's not let's keep saying that, they don't get it, they don't get it. The thing is, you need to educate them. Okay, and I will do a video on that. And so that's it, and thank you.